Hello and welcome in. I am Miss Kinghorn and we are back here in our Red Lane Zoo in Planet Zoo, and we are building a tapir habitat. This has been one of those builds where I've wanted to do for a while and it just never really worked out in kind of the placement of where I really wanted it to be, and I figured here would be a really nice point. And obviously we are coming up to the end of this kind of zoo and this sort of build in here as well. So yeah, I figured why not. Now, as per usual with my builds, this is ridiculously large, but we kind of remove a lot of this in terms of like planting, rock work and things. So whilst it looks big, it isn't actually that big when you come to look at it, really. Anyhow, you can see I have created a kind of a water sort of moat, I guess, at the entrance of this, where the guests are kind of viewing them. Now the path is slightly further back in on where this sort of pathing is. I guess it's a cover that we've placed over the top of this because it didn't quite work with the train manipulation that we had to do, so I've kind of hidden it a little bit more into there as we sort of go along. But yeah, that's what we basically had to do in here, and now you can sort of see I am building this fence. It's quite simple but I think quite effective, and it looks very much in keeping with what I have for other areas of this sort of zoo in here, and it's going to be kind of the moot fencing that we use for this area completely. So that's just something that we are going to do in all of here. Now, as per usual, I only show you a little bit of this. This is quite fiddly, it's time consuming, it's going backwards and forwards and making sure angles are right and taking a look from a further distance to make sure that the curves are all nice and smooth and things like that. So I basically just do this front section here for you, because naturally in any of my zoos nothing is ever quite straight. Nothing is ever quite as simple as what it should be. So even this section here that looks right, yeah, shockingly it isn't into here. So as if by magic, there we go, it is all done, and now we're going to work on the rock work. Now we are kind of embedding quite big rocks here into this quite a steep drop off area here. This is sort of habitat front into the water in there. Now we do actually have a point where they can access this water because that is a requirement for them, although I am actually in sandbox, so I have like sort of plants and barriers and all of that kind of switched off, so it doesn't technically matter. I can kind of do as small of a habitat as I really wanted, or as large as the one I really wanted, with as many plants, but you know what I mean. I try to kind of make it as realistic as possible. I feel like that's something we should all be kind of doing in here for them, into there. But talking of realism and plans and the future, we have 3 more habitats, I do believe, and a tour to go in the zoo. That is literally it. So yeah, I was thinking of actually combining 2 animals into this habitat, the tapir and the capuchin monkeys. I built it in my head just for the tapirs, but then thought, oh, I could maybe add them in here, like, you know, they can work together. But in the end I was like, I don't really fancy doing another monkey just yet. So I think what we might do is we might do those last, and then do like the finishing touches of this building, because at the moment you can kind of see bits of this building are not complete. I'm kind of adding to it as we build each kind of habitat up. That was kind of the plan that I had in my mind. So I think for the final episode and final habitat, I think we'll do a finishing touches, kind of like the benches, the see that those sorts of bits and pieces that you really need in there. I know we have toilets, but they're just kind of a block built item in there. But super looking forward to Planet Zoo 2. It feels quite far away, and then you actually have a look at it and go, it's not that far. So yeah, and we know some of the animals that we are getting. They are slowly teasing them out on online. So we know we're getting my favourite animal, the tree kangaroo. I have really wanted one in this game, but I was kind of a bit like, yeah, okay, maybe not. Like, maybe we're not going to get one. But it turns out we are going to get one in Planet Zoo 2, which super, super looking forward to. They are adorable, and especially their babies. Yeah, they're one of my favourite animals, and yeah, they're just cute. Little guys into there. So you can pretty much guarantee we will be building a habitat for them. I don't know in what kind of zoo we're going to be building. I have so many ideas, so many suggestions, and yeah, it's just a lot at the moment. I feel like what I might do is I may come in and like just do a really rough little zoo of just like a couple of maybe my favourite animals, and then we'll sort of start on the big kind of project that I'm going to do. We're going to do a Red Lane Zoo .2, we'll come up with a better name, in there, where we kind of get lots of sort of do a proper zoo with lots of the animals and stuff like that in. So yeah, if you have any ideas for what you would like to see from me, let me know down in the comments, because they are very important to me, and yeah, we'll see what we can kind of come up with when we get our hands on the game in the beginning of October. Like, what? Yeah, so I'm possibly thinking of eking this series out, so maybe not doing a build for a couple of weeks, like longer than what I have been doing, because I've kind of been rotating my 3 games round at the moment. I'm thinking maybe doing a couple of other kind of builds in some other games, just so that we can finish one zoo and go straight into Planet Zoo 2. That's kind of what I'm thinking in my head, rather than just finishing this zoo and then having a gap, which isn't really ideal for me, because if I stop playing, I tend to stop playing, hence why this little mini break ended up being over a year. That was not the plan into there, but yes. So let me know what you think. If you have any ideas or suggestions or feedback at all, let me know down there. But yeah, this is now all rocked. We've placed all of that in, the floor is all in, and then we've got our aquatic planting in here. Some of this isn't quite as natural, I guess, as what it really should be, and we are also using these little kind of I'm not even quite sure what they are. They look like rocks that kind of just come out of the water randomly. I just thought that was a really nice little feature, and they do kind of pop out over the top of the water that we get in, so just a nice little feature into there as well. And I'm trying to find this tree here, but for some reason I just could not find it originally, so we get a couple of those in. We have also got an enrichment bowl in here as well. I figured that would be a nice little touch in there, and especially because it floats, so it just kind of bobs on the water a little bit, and yeah, it's just a nice draw, and it gets them actually into the water, as you can sort of see. I floated it here. A couple of the trees just sticking out, a couple of those little spiky rock things also sticking through the top in here. And now we're going to place some lilies on this section. I kind of didn't want them to get too close up here, because it is quite a narrow section, and although I have escaping off, I just thought at the moment we don't have any barriers along that side. It's just like a little sort of rock wall thing, so I just didn't want them to get too close to it in terms of that. But we sort of figure that one out later on. And now we are gonna kind of make this a little bit overgrown, I guess, into here. So this sort of is a really nice kind of plant barrier, I guess we can really say, where we've kind of mixed in lots of bracken, bramble, I think is it ashworth, the kind of big plants that we've kind of used in here. We've got lots of like ferns and these beech trees, which are a really nice sort of wall up there, as I was talking about. And then we also get in some like grasses and things like that, just to kind of break this all up a little bit more in there. And as I say, this is a really lush kind of green habitat with what appears to be lots of space, but when I actually had a look at the hit map, and these are the Baird's tapir, because obviously they're the ones that come from South America and things like that, which is where this zoo is. So most of our animals are either North America or South American animals in here. There is a couple of others that are like, that we're pretending that they could be other animals in there, but yeah, if you want to know which ones those are, check out the whole series. I will put a card up in the top corner for you for that one, to go back to the very beginning, and you don't have a whole year wait in there as well. But we place in I didn't realise, because they were original animals, that their hitboxes were quite so large. I feel like it's something that the team worked on over the last sort of couple of years that this game had been in development, that the hitboxes for the animals were just getting a little bit smaller. But yeah, because they are one of the originals, they are so big, and it made this a little bit more difficult than what it really needed to be. So I have come back in post-recording pre-screenshots and cinematics and removed a few rocks, lowered some, changed a few bits and pieces. I also had a nightmare trying to get them to get out of the hard shelter. So the habitat gate that we have to have is actually inside the hard shelter, which is fine. The keepers could get out, the animals couldn't, because it basically needs to be like a 4x4 meter box, which is so unrealistic because the animals are not going to go out sideways, so, or standing like on their bums. So yeah, it was just a little bit of a faff trying to kind of work out how to get the animals in and out, and trying not to also make it too ridiculously large, where we ended up it did end up becoming ridiculously large. I'm sorry, that was a very loud car randomly driving past into that. So what we have done while I have been completely and utterly waffling about hitboxes is we have placed the forage feeder in and created a bit of a kind of rock wall and floor about here, a little bit of a retaining wall in there. It just feels a nice little touch in there, and I have made sure that kind of the guests can see through. Now it's not perfect because the animals aren't that high up from the sort of the guests, but they're kind of more eye level with them in terms of kind of certain aspects. And you'll notice when I did the planting that I did kind of add some height to certain areas, but also other bits are purposely kept low so that like your sightlines, you can see into the habitat a little bit better. That was all deliberate because I kind of roughly worked out where I knew I wanted the feeders to go, the enrichment to go, where I think they would spend most of their time. I'm predicting where they're going to spend most of their time in here. But yeah, when I did the cinematics, I did actually kind of play for a little while just to kind of get them to like move around and stuff. We don't have a baby, which is a shame because I would love to have taken cinematics of the baby because their babies are adorable. How many times do you think I'm going to say the word baby in this episode? Into there. But yeah, it just never really happened. So to be fair, I think I got maybe one shot of the two of them interacting at all. Which is a little bit of a shame, but you know, it was what it was. They just weren't really interested in each other. But yeah, this would have been adorable with a baby, and there it is again. Right. So you can sort of see here, I have placed some of the bigger rocks, and then I realised we have some of these artificial rocks that could work really well, just kind of like smooshed into the ground a little bit more. So yeah, I changed over and have now used these to save my piece count a little bit more into there. I don't think it's something I really need to worry about this late in this game, but you never know. With this game, sometimes it can just throw you a little bit of a wobbly. So you can see here some of these areas where the animals just can't walk because they are so close together. And it's kind of funny because I was actually having a look at where the tapirs actually are in like the wild, and they can sort of use these little like rocky riverbeds and things like that, and they can traverse on lots of rocks and stuff. So yeah, I don't really know what the issue is as to why they couldn't, but some of these little ones here kind of ended up going, and yeah, it was just one of those things. Anyway, we are now basically coming along and adding a whole base layer to our planting, I guess is probably the best word to use in here. We go through and we add in so much buffalo grass. It just feels like realistic kind of grass that's sort of coming up through this sort of habitat. Now, the animals in this game don't eat it, so but I have sort of lowered it in certain areas where I feel like the animals would eat it, and where they obviously can into there. Now, one thing I am super looking forward to in Planet Zoo 2 is the fact that the animals will be able to interact with basically anything in their habitat. So like the rocks, the trees, they can like scratch on them. The water that they can like play in and like drink from, which I think they can drink from water in Planet Zoo, like the current one, but I feel like they still need to have their own water, like tap in there. So hopefully that's something that we can get rid of, because those things are awful. They do not look quite nice in there. And yeah, so I'm wondering kind of if like trees you have to kind of maybe replace every couple of years, because like if a tiger is scratching or a bear is rubbing themselves against the tree will just naturally kind of die eventually. So I'm kind of thinking that maybe we get like a notification to say a tree in habitat of the tiger habitat, for example, has collapsed and needs replacing, like £250, click here sort of thing. Or maybe we can keep it as part of the habitat if they do knock it over or something, that kind of thing. I'm hoping for, wondering what we're kind of going to get in there, but we'll have to sort of see in October as to how that kind of all comes together. But super excited to see how like trees and elephants work, because we all know that elephants can knock over trees in the wild. Can they do that in the zoo, or do we have to place like the tree guards kind of around them? Do they automatically come with them if they are in a habitat? That sort of thing. And talking of habitats, my fears of aviaries have been rectified. So anybody who was here in the last episode, you know, I went on a bit of a tangent about aviaries and my dislike of building them because I was rubbish at them. Yeah, it's basically going to be like a one-click button. It's going to be a little bit more involved than that, but it's going to be so much simpler and easier than what I actually feared, which is amazing, because my aviaries are horrible. I try not to do them, to be fair. I try to kind of minimize as much as I possibly could use of them, because I just cannot build them for the life of me. So we have the cranes in one, we have the chickens in another, and I think we have the jaguar in another one. And we've done the monkeys last episode. So we've got 4 in the zoo. They all kind of, in a way, look exactly the same, except for maybe the jaguar habitat, which is very angular and very sort of sharp and pointy, whereas the others are a little bit flat and boring, I guess we could say. But yeah, my fears have been relieved in the fact that it is going to be a lot easier and automatic, I guess is maybe the wrong word to use, but like it looks so much simpler. So super happy with that into here. But I have yet again been waffling on a tangent about Avery's second episode in a row. We have basically finished up all of the sort of landscaping, the planting, and all of that in. Now we are building in, well, I say building in, we're copying and pasting this rock wall in the back here. This is going to go all the way along here. This is kind of going to separate the outside from the inside part of this. Now, I do not like this inside part of this habitat. I'm just going to throw that out there right now for you. I don't like it. It's very bland, it's very boring, it's very... Ugh. I struggled with this, and this was the part where I literally had barely any time left if I wanted to get this video out in time, and also very little motivation is probably not the right word. I had done the habitat and the outsides, and then I had kind of sat on it for a little while. I've been busy doing some other things and not necessarily forgot, but had to come back in and do this. I was in a rush. My inspiration for this kind of failed, and so yeah, here is kind of what you're gonna get, a little bit of a box in there, and not what I'm particularly happy with. I may come back in and tinker with this. This is the opening that I said I didn't particularly like. It makes it like twice as large as this. And this already looks ridiculously large. But yeah, I have to basically double the size of that opening into there. But I think I may come back in and tinker with the interior for all of this at a later point, when I maybe have some more ideas for this, because at the moment I am just, I had nothing. When we came to do this section here, I've tried to keep it as in keeping with the monkeys that we did last time in here as well, but obviously they had like a big climbing frame inside, they had some like nice planting, and all of their food was inside, whereas this one the keepers can go outside. So it was a little bit different in terms of kind of what needed to go on the inside of here, that I didn't really know what to do with it, and I basically just left it as a big box. But as I say, I will come back and have another look and maybe a little play around in the future. It may just suddenly be done for you in here, but we are using kind of the same materials that we used through the rest of this, so as I said, to try and keep it as in keeping and as sort of smooth as possible, because this is going to be the interior of a big house in here, which is going to basically have all of the habitats in for the rest of this sort of series. So we're going to have sort of some wings coming off in there to have the different animals on as well. But that's why I'm purposely not finishing this, because I don't necessarily know what I want it to completely look like at this moment in time, so I'm kind of just building each section by section and kind of just playing around with kind of what I really wanted this to sort of end up looking like into there. But now we're going to bring in the plaster on the inside of this. So this is now kind of in the habitat in there. Now the barrier is just onto this sort of smaller section in there where the staff buildings are. I'm not going to do a detailed staff backstage area for this. Honestly, I am rubbish at doing them. They always look exactly the same and are very boring to me. And I'm very much a guest kind of focused kind of player and a habitat focused. I'm not necessarily worrying too much about what the sort of staff areas and behind the scenes are looking like. I feel like that matters maybe a little bit more in the next game rather than what it does here. I feel like the staff just kind of get on with it regardless of what it looks like in here, because I feel like the boxes are going, from what I can kind of understand from the extended trailer that we saw, was like a live stream, I think catch-up video that I watched. It feels like the boxes have gone, which I'm super glad about because they are a little bit repetitive and a little bit boring. However, it does mean that I'm maybe gonna have to do a little bit more work backstage into there. But anyway, we have now jumped on to doing some work on the exterior of this. Now, we were basically clad in this in rock along the front section, so I figured let's do this on the side here. Now, because of where this habitat is, the lighting isn't quite as good as where it maybe should be, so yeah, you're just gonna have to, I'm afraid, apologize for the kind of weird lighting that we have in this sort of zone here. It's just the orientation of this habitat and kind of where it is in the zoo in here. But yeah, we've now just kind of mixed and matched these in, kind of just pushing some of these back through in there, just so that the kind of whole outside of this building looks like it has this sort of rock facade on the top, or on the sides on here. And yeah, now we're going to jump back onto the inside. I don't know why we didn't do this when we did the habitat, when we did the walls. Anyway, into here we can also see I have a little bit of terrain work to kind of manipulate and push around and do bits and pieces for as well, because yeah, it just doesn't quite look as good as it should do. This is basically as good as it gets. What we do is we just hide it. I have actually placed the path just the other side of this glass, so that is also having an impact into there as well. But I think we just get in a cardboard box, and I do believe, yeah, we kind of get in a fake little wheel. I figured that they would just like play around with it, and yeah, it was one of those things where I was like, it's so obvious that they should be able to play around with it, but like, why can't they? But I feel like that's something that's maybe coming in an episode into Zoo 2. Ugh, words today. Anyway, you can see here we're using these little walls, rockworks in here to kind of create little planters, and yeah, we have one over there, and then we also have another one, a bigger one over on this corner as well, just kind of roughly working out where I really want these to look like in here. And yeah, we sort of changed up the height. With this one we wanted it to be a little bit taller, but the other one is actually in the glass, so I couldn't go too high with that one. But when we ended up getting in the mulch and all the planting and stuff, it kind of really works in there. But as I say, this habitat hole in a hole kind of looks quite boring. Well, not the habitat, this internal section. Yeah, I feel like maybe we're gonna have to have a play around and off camera maybe see if we can make this a little bit more fun in here than what it actually is. If you have any ideas, let me know, because I am at a loss as to what to do for this little bit in here. Now, we end up having to use some teeny tiny little ones for this corner because I realised I couldn't just kind of expect them to not show on the other side. So in the end, we use the little ones in there, and it kind of works nicely. Now I have just basically gone for tropical and temperate planting in here because I feel like this is like air conditioned. It's a really nice sort of space for them. I did think maybe we could add some water into the interior of this, but honestly, the terrain manipulation with like the plant path and that, it just would have been a little bit too complicated to kind of put in. And as I said earlier, trying to do this interior section, I didn't have much time, so I figured I'd just keep it nice and flat and simple for the time being in there. Maybe possibly perhaps in the future, we can see in here. But I did also manage to get in a nice tree in this kind of planter. Now there's no guarantees the animals won't actually be able to just walk up onto here. They should technically be able to do this. I've never seen them actually do it, and I don't know in the hitbox whether they can, but they should be able to. It's not that high, so yeah. But I really liked this nice sort of large kind of palm in here. I just felt it added a nice little bit of height to this sort of habitat in there, and also using some of the hostas and just some more greenery kind of just to bring all of this nicely together, and also some of the planting that we've used outside as well, just to kind of make it feel a little bit more in keeping. And yeah, just wanting them to not clip through the front of that. And we've done something fun a little bit, well, I say fun, with the bedding in here. We've actually placed some mulch pouches down and then added some like their bedding plant leaves and stuff on top of that. I just figured it would make a really nice kind of area. It's a little bit softer than them just sleeping on like the plaster floor in here. Now I haven't done like a backstage habitat area for them because again they all look the same and I didn't have time. And it's a lot of trying to work out, especially because I realised quite early that their hitboxes were so large that I was like, we are not gonna have the space to kind of do them properly in terms of this. But now we're gonna jump over to the roof. So we are nearly done with this now. This roof took me quite a long time to actually work out, and there is a few cuts into this because this is already my third attempt at trying to get this roof to actually work. Now we are taking inspiration, very very loosely inspiration, from the Predator house at Berlin Zoo. And if anybody knows the roof of that house, knows it kind of has this sort of peaked kind of roof on this section. I actually think this is the lion habitat eventually. The only images I can find of this is it like being in construction, so I'm not entirely sure it's actually open yet, but yeah, it kind of has this sort of slanted roof coming up on it. It is the other way. I screwed up and did it the wrong way, and then I just rolled with it because, well, I did into here. But yeah, that is what we are taking inspiration from for this whole sort of zoo, or this whole house, I guess, into here. And yeah, I think it resembles it to the point where you could maybe get away with it if you didn't know it too intimate, like if you hadn't seen too many photos of the habitat and the house and stuff. But yeah, anyhow, we do have a plaster roof coming back in as well. I wanted these just to make sure that they were in the right area in case we lowered them. In the end, we changed the minds on that one, but you'll sort of see that in a second when we figure that one out. But also deciding to bring over this lighting kind of box all the way across under here, so that we now have light on both sides of this glass for sort of the members of the public as well, just in case it is a little bit dark. And also it's indoors, so it is going to be a little bit darker. But yeah, with these all sort of glass roofs pieces that we are getting in, because there's now one in the monkey habitat, there is this one over here. We should be adding in quite a lot of sort of natural light to this area. And yeah, what I have planned in the middle should also kind of help with that. But we're quickly coming up to the end of this episode. If you have enjoyed it, then make sure to give it a big thumbs up, and you can subscribe to my channel here as well. It would mean so very, very much to me. You can also follow me on pretty much all social medias. The link to those is down in the descriptions as well. And yeah, I will leave you with the cinematics and screenshots. But until next time, bye everyone!